right, welcome to a new college 12-pack podcast. In a little bit, a lot of traveling, a lot of things happening, but we're going to try and get this in. I know we've been trying to record this for a couple weeks, but with me, as always, Tyler Matuno of LSU Tigers Wire and For the Win. I am Patrick Collins, senior editor of the College Wires, and Tyler, we're going to jump right into it. We're going to be talking CFP expansion, but here's my big problem. We haven't even seen the 12 team yet, and we're already talking about 14. Feels like a money grab by two of the greediest conferences in college football. I'm talking about the SEC and the Big Ten. We know the only teams that have really won a national championship in the CFP. But I digress. There's still an aspect of them wanting to sweeten their pot a little bit more as this money grab called the CFP looks to expand again.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit on the major points there. I think it's pretty obvious what this is. I mean, so like just to kind of clarify a little bit, the 12-team playoff contract, which we haven't actually seen go into effect yet, only runs for 2024 and 2025. So beyond that, it was uncertain how they were going to proceed. And this is not official that we're moving to 14, but it certainly seems like we are heading in that direction. And yeah, I mean, I think the way you categorize it as a power grab is pretty accurate. I mean, it seems like the way this would be set up would be at least 3 guaranteed auto bids for the SEC and the Big Ten. And I think it really just kind of goes back to the power vacuum that this sport has. The lack of leadership, lack of accountability from the top down has sort of created this scenario where the most influential power brokers in this sport, in this case, the SEC and the Big Ten, have been able to sort of come in and dictate the terms. We've seen this trend kind of happening over the last few months. Remember the Joint Advisory Council that they started a while back, acted like that wasn't going to be, pushing for any specific changes in college football, more just trying to be proactive. But I mean, we'll see if that's actually how that ends up working out. And I think you kind of nailed it. Like my main thought process here is not that it's bad inherently to go to 14. I mean, the FCS has done a 16-team playoff for years now, and that works. So I don't think playoff expansion is inherently bad, but we haven't even seen what it looks like at 12 yet. And I think I'd like to at least see that before we just, go all out on shamelessly expanding this thing to cater to the SEC and Big Ten, especially when, I mean, it kind of seems to me like they're really positioning themselves to try to break away from the NCAA eventually, maybe not imminently, but eventually.
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to, when you look at the model that they've talked about with the 5 and the 7, when we talk about the 4 power conferences and the best group of 5, and then you have 7 automatic qualifiers, I kind of feel like a 3-3-2-2-1 deal that they talked about, where the Big Ten, SEC get 3, Big 12, ACC get 2, and then the group of 5 only get 1 in. I think that can be counterintuitive, really, if you look at it, because let's just say, for instance, North Carolina, Florida State, Clemson have really good seasons. Only 2 of them are getting in that case. Which again, it speaks to team, the whole idea of the expansion is so that we're not talking about this. But I think we all knew eventually this conversation was going to happen one way or the other, because yes, you've expanded to 12. Well, now we're going to be talking about that 13th team that should have been in. It's always going to be, we're always going to have that conversation, but I think it's an easier pill to swallow at 13 than it is at 5. Because Georgia had a case for being in the playoff despite losing that SEC title last year. But like I said, we knew this was coming. And once again, as we all expected, I think I expected, at least, Tyler, you're probably in the same boat. Hey, ESPN gets CFP exclusivity once again, as they're getting a new deal that pretty much is going to keep the college football playoff on their networks.
Yeah, not really a major surprise there. So I believe it's a 6-year, $7.8 billion extension. It's going to run through the 2031-32 academic year. So yeah, I mean, the main reason this is significant is because there was a little bit of speculation that with the expanded playoffs, they would maybe split the broadcasting rights, kind of in a similar vein to how the NFL does it. Like there'd be some playoff games on CBS, some on Fox, some on ESPN. Obviously, that's not how they're going to end up proceeding here. And I mean, it doesn't really impact that much about, the way the actual playoffs going to look. I think it's more significant in terms of the overall sports media landscape. I mean, this kind of allows the SEC to, sort of allows the SEC to, maintain its, the ESPN to maintain its inventory. They already have that new contract. They've got the SEC deal locked up. This sort of just guarantees that they're going to have a really strong college football inventory for the next decade at least.
Yeah. So the idea of with this deal running through 2032, if NBC or CBS or Fox Sports or name broadcast company wants to get involved in broadcasting his games, because we know that they can bring huge views, and we know that they bring plenty of eyeballs to their network. They can't get involved with this, and they kind of just kind of have to wait, because ESPN has the rights to it. Obviously, there's other sports that they can try to get in, but as we know, college football as a whole has been a huge cash cow, and that is why it's significant for ESPN. They kind of keep a stranglehold. They kind of monopolize it when it comes to the CFP. During the season, there are other networks that get involved with the games, but as far as the playoff games and how this playoff is going to even look with 14 teams, we're not sure. Should it go to that? ESPN continues to be the name, the face of it all.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, ESPN has monopolized the CFP since it came into existence in 2014, and that's going to continue for another 6 years at least, 6 years at least. So, I think that one thing that we didn't notice too, that's also, or didn't note, that's also kind of significant about this, is beginning in 2027, they're going to be moving the national title game to ABC rather than being on the main ESPN channel. So that's kind of just going to potentially broaden the audience there, it being broadcast locally rather than being cable only. But that was kind of the only other note I had there. I mean, again, not really a surprise. I think we probably would have both assumed that ESPN would hang on to these rights. But again, there was some speculation that we could be seeing some split broadcasting rights here like they do in the NFL. So noteworthy that that's not going to be the case.
Now to the games that are actually taking place. And as we're shutting down recording this on Wednesday, you'll be hearing this on Thursday or whenever you tune into our show. The West bracket, let's talk a little bit about the March Madness Sweet 16 for the men. A couple of games, the regional semifinals or Sweet 16 going down. We've got North Carolina taking on an Alabama squad, and then we have Arizona and Clemson. And just real quick, I think this, for North Carolina, it's a good matchup as far as being able to get to that next round. For Alabama, it's tough, right? You have a team that's not very good defensively. They're kind of streaky, and when you talk about streaky teams, that can be good and bad in the NCAA tournament. And we've seen streaky teams run all the way to the title. But I think that Alabama is really going to have a hard time with R.J. Davis in this game, and that is why I will not be picking Alabama to come away victorious in this game and miss out on the Elite Eight once again.
Yeah, I'm with you. North Carolina is my pick here. I won't prolong the inevitable with that one. They were a team I was pretty skeptical about coming into the tournament. I would say they were the one seed I was most skeptical about. They were obviously the bottom seeded one seed. I think they've been really impressive. I mean, I think a lot of us probably didn't think Michigan State was a team that really deserved to be in the tournament, but that's still, a Tom Izzo coach team. They know how to win games in the tournament, and they absolutely dominated them. So I'm pretty high on this North Carolina team right now, higher than I was entering the tournament, that's for sure. And Alabama, like you said, a team that struggles defensively, a team that's been very inconsistent at times this season. And I mean, did you watch that Alabama Grand Canyon game in the second round? That was one of the most ridiculous games of basketball I've ever watched. I mean, they survived, but it was nonsense. It was street ball. It was crazy. It was ugly. It was just unreal. They're not going to win this game if they play like that. I can tell you that much. I expect them to play better than they did in that game, but I don't think it's going to be enough to beat this North Carolina team.
Yeah, no, if they're going to play that style of basketball against North Carolina, Hubert Davis is going to have a field day coaching that team. against Alabama. That's going to be a tough one. And then in the other game that we have, Arizona, led by former Tar Heel point guard Caleb Love. They're going up against Clemson, a team that he's pretty familiar with, considering he played in the ACC. And with an opportunity to take on his former team. And wouldn't that be something? Caleb Love leads Arizona against North Carolina in the Elite Eight and keeps his former team from getting to the Final Four. That'd be quite the matchup. Clemson's a team that I think they're a puzzling team, I think would be a good way to put it. They're a team that I will be completely honest, I didn't think that we would be talking about a Clemson Tigers basketball team at this point in the season. They looked good early on, and they kind of fell off, but it's been that inconsistency. When you look at their team, and I was looking at the numbers. If you look at the Ken Palm, I mean, they're top 40 in both offense and defensive adjusted metrics, but they're just not a team that I think is consistent enough, or at least I didn't think they were consistent enough. But hey, who knows? I may be completely wrong, but I kind of felt like March Sadness is coming for Clemson.
Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling, but I will say, like, this is a more intriguing game to me than I thought it could have been coming into the tournament. First of all, didn't think this game was going to happen. Arizona is my Final Four pick out of this region, and I think I still stand by that, though North Carolina has looked better than I thought they would. But I mean, Clemson is a team that I had losing in the first round. I had New Mexico beating them and actually getting to the Sweet 16. So they've impressed me. I think a team that, like you nailed it. They have been so streaky. I think probably more streaky than anyone in the country. Had a really hot undefeated start, beat Alabama, then got really cold in the middle of ACC play. Looked like they might not even make the tournament. Got things back on track, but then kind of had another dip at the end of the regular season. And then in the ACC tournament, got blown out in their first game. So this was a team I did not go into the tournament feeling very good about at all. They've looked really good. Credit to Brad Brownell, the coach there, a guy that entered this year on the hot seat, really needed to make the tournament, probably needed to make the tournament and at least win a game, if not two. And he's done that. Got them to the second weekend, back to the Sweet 16. They've only made it once since I think 1997. So this is a really, cool moment for this program. They're playing better than I thought they would, but I do think this is going to be the end of the road here. I think this Arizona team is just too good.
Yeah, I think the last time that they made it to the Elite Eight, if I remember correctly, 1980. It's been a long time. But yeah, if you're looking at predictions here, I think we're looking at a North Carolina-Arizona Elite Eight matchup, which
electric.
You've got two blue blood programs essentially going head to head this early. I almost feel like we're getting robbed because this game is probably going to happen too early. This is Final Four stuff. This is national championship game type of implications. But as I digress, I think Tyler's with me. We're going with the top seeds in this matchup. All right, so we're going to go over to the Midwest bracket, and this is where it's going to get interesting. We got Purdue, Gonzaga, Tennessee, Creighton. I think the top seeds lose. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm picking the underdogs in both games. I do not trust Purdue. They're a one-sided team with a one-sided weapon in the middle. Zach Edey, yeah, you're great cleaning the boards, getting those easy hoops because of how tall you are. But if they get behind, they are not built for that. And I just do not think that they can contend with Gonzaga if Gonzaga gets on a roll like they did against the Jayhawks.
Yeah, the only reason I reacted like that is because I thought this is where we'd finally split. But I'm with you. I have both underdogs winning these games as well. I think Gonzaga, a team that had a weird year for them, didn't win the WCC regular season for the first time in quite a few years, and got in as a 5 seed, a team that was sort of on the bubble for a while, which is strange territory for Gonzaga to find itself in under Mark Few, but they've looked really good. Beat a Kansas team in the last round, dominated them. A Kansas team that I think we probably both thought was not poised to make a deep run, partially because of the McCullough injury, but also even before that, this was a team that had its share of struggles. But still, Gonzaga went out and beat them in dominating fashion in the second round. So this is a team I'm really high on. And Purdue, again, a team I did not have a lot of faith in. I didn't think they were going to get upset by a 16 seed again, but I also didn't think this was a team that was as good maybe for the tournament as some of the other 1 seeds were, but they've looked good. I mean, they beat Utah State by 39 in their last game. That's a pretty solid Utah State team. But I'm with you. I think Gonzaga's playing really well right now. And I just don't completely trust Purdue.
And also, like when I look at some of these matchups, if I feel teams are close, and I do think Gonzaga and Purdue are close, I start looking at the head coaches, and I trust Mark Few a lot more than I do Matt Painter. I'm sorry, I'm going to go with Few, especially considering he was in the Elite Eight last year or the year before.
And along those lines, that's kind of the same logic I'm using for the other game too. I think I trust McDermott more than I trust Rick Barnes at this point, you know, with the struggles that his teams have had in the tournament. I think this is a really good one, by the way. I think this is probably the most complete team that Rick Barnes has had at Tennessee. This is the one I felt most confident could make a deep run, and I still think they're really good. I just think this is a bad matchup, honestly. Like, I think that Tennessee is a Elite Eight caliber team, but I think Creighton's really good. I think the way they've been playing has impressed me, you know, beating an Oregon team that, you know, was sort of playing with house money, but came into that game playing hot and you know, impressed me. I'm going Creighton to win that game as well.
You know, it's interesting. Creighton, this is their second game against an SEC opponent. They took down Alabama earlier in the year. Interesting note, this will be the 6th time that McDermott and Barnes have gone head-to-head, the first time outside of the Big 12. When Barnes was at Texas and McDermott was the head coach of the Iowa State. He's never beaten Barnes, but I think that probably is going to change this week. As I with you, I guess we're just going to keep rolling this thing along. Tyler
just
and myself,
real quick.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to cut you off. I just want to say real quick, I forgot to say, Creighton was my Final Four pick in this region coming in, and I am standing by that. I still think they come out of this region.
Well, there you have it. I mean, if you're going to pick them as a Final Four team, you got to keep rolling along. We're both going Gonzaga. We're both going Creighton in this one. We might split on this next one as we get into the South bracket. We're going to be talking about the Houston Cougars, talking about Duke, Marquette, NC State. Interesting enough, NC State's the lowest seeded team still in the tournament at number 11. They took down my Red Raiders in the first round, which I didn't think my Red Raiders were going very far. But then they were, and hey, they got an easier matchup with Oakland in that round of 32, and now here they are getting ready to take on Marquette. But before we really dive too deep into that, we have Houston and Duke. Houston, number 1 seed in their bracket, going up against a Duke team, number 4. You know, Duke has their issues with some injuries, but Duke is a well-established team who can put it on you, and we've seen that. Neither one of their games that they played this year were in the tournament have been close.
Yeah, and that's, I think, you know, this was a Duke team. I didn't really believe in them that much coming into this tournament, but the way they've played in the first 2 rounds has been pretty convincing. I mean, you know, beat a hot James Madison. You know, James Madison team was like 31-3, beat him no problem. So, you know, I think that Duke's playing really well. This game is. This is probably the game in the Sweet 16 that I'm most looking forward to. I think it's going to be a really fun game. And if you had asked me before the tournament started about this hypothetical Sweet 16 matchup, I would have picked Houston pretty easily, I think. And I still am going to pick Houston to win this game, but I'm a lot less confident in that pick than I was a couple days ago.
Houston's one of my Final Four teams, so it's difficult for me. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's the interesting part here is going to be how does the Houston defense go up against that Duke offense? I think is going to be the clear matchup. You know, because if they can, if they can defend the perimeter very well in this game, I think that gives Houston a clear shot. And obviously, they have one of the best defensive players in there with Sheed. I think he does really well. Can he slow down Duke's offense in this game? That's going to be the big matchup for me. But I think I'm going to have to go with Houston on this one. Just because, well, once again, I did put them in my Final Four. And honestly, I think they're a more well-rounded team. If you look at the metrics like the Ken Palm that I was just looking up, Houston's number 2 overall with the number 2 ranked defense, top 15 offense. That is going to spell success. And honestly, Sampson has been here. Kelvin Sampson's been here. He's a really good coach. So I think this might be the year that he finally gets back in that Final Four and potentially a national championship game.
Yeah, and Houston's been kind of that team all year. They've been the team that the metrics have loved. You know, they've been the number 1 team in the net for pretty much the entire season. So, you know, again, just team that the analytics love, a team that passes the eye test. I think this is just the first real major test, and we saw them struggle a little bit with Texas A&M. So I am curious how they handle that. But looking at the other game, I mean, I think NC State Marquette. I mean, NC State, first of all, it's been a pretty chalky tournament so far. I mean, we saw a couple upsets, you know, Yale beating Auburn, Oakland beating Kentucky, but for the most part, not as many as we've seen in past years. So NC State's kind of the biggest Cinderella still remaining, you know, a bid thief out of the ACC. I think the question for them I have is just like, how long feasibly can they keep this up? I mean, this team has to be exhausted. They had to win 5 games in 5 days to win the ACC tournament. You know, then went out, upset, you know, a higher seeded Texas Tech team, you know, one of the second round too. Like, I question if they can keep doing this, but I actually do really like this matchup for them. I'm not a huge believer in Marquette. I think they struggled against a Colorado team that, yeah, I'm a bitter Florida fan, whatever. I think Florida was a better team than Colorado and they should have won that game, but that's whatever. But point being, I wasn't super impressed with Colorado and thought they, you know, had a very good chance to beat Marquette in that game, even with Tyler Kolek playing, who's kind of, you know, his health was the big question for this Marquette team coming into the tournament. I don't really buy them. I really do believe in this NC State team, the way they're playing. I'm not sure they're poised to make like a Final Four run, but I think I'm going to take them to win this game.
I think the thing that hurts Marquette is, you know, while they have Tyler Kolek back and they have Cam Jones, they don't have a guy who could really protect the paint. And that's really where I think that NC State can create some problems, is getting inside, getting to the paint. You know,
I mean, DJ Burns is a bad man to try to defend inside.
Yeah, that's my whole deal, and I think I'm going to lean Marquette. But if we are to come back, you know, if NC State does make it to the Elite Eight, DJ Burns is probably going to be the reason, and I won't be surprised because of the lack of a rim protector that they have. So I'm taking Marquette, but my confidence is 51-49 on that one. So it's really a coin flip for me. But I can totally see why you would be rolling with NC State. They've kind of got the momentum, and you know, as we always say, ride the hot hand, and that's definitely what we're going to do here. East bracket. Now, this one's interesting to me just because of the first matchup between UConn, San Diego State. These are 2 Final Four teams from a year ago. Obviously, Kentucky, defending champions. You know, they've won 7 straight since that loss against Creighton, and I think it's the only loss since we turned the calendar. You know, this year in 2024. So it's hard to go against them, but I do like the fact that, you know, San Diego State was a team that didn't have a hangover. They came marching right back. But I don't know that they have the talent level to contend with UConn in this one.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is interesting in the sense that it's a rematch of the national championship game. You know, really impressive run for Brian Dutcher, who I think is doing an incredible job coaching at San Diego State. That's about all I can say for how interesting I think this game is going to be honest with you. I'm kind of expecting a similar result to last year's national title, which I believe UConn won by 17. You know, look, this UConn team is the hottest team in the country right now. They're the best team in the country. They're my national championship pick. You know, it would hurt me a little bit to see another team pull off the repeat. You know, no one's done it since Florida did it, but if they did, it'd be really impressive. I think they're going to breeze through this game, to be honest with you. This is the game. I think all of these, I could see an argument either way. This is the only result I think that would truly shock me if San Diego State won this game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that would be a huge shock. I'm expecting a blowout. This next game, though, I think is going to be a really competitive game. The last game that we're going to discuss here real quick, Iowa State, Illinois. Iowa State's a pesky team, Big 12 tournament champions. They took down Houston, and that game wasn't even close. I mean, they just were able to flex their muscle in that game. There were times where you thought Houston might climb back in it, but then Iowa State ran away with it. They're a pesky team, and I think that they're going to give Illinois a little bit of trouble, a team that hasn't really been back to the Elite Eight round since 2000. So it's been a while for Illinois. But the one caveat I will say in this game, kind of a insider note, I guess you could say, TJ Shannon, former Red Raider who's playing on this Illinois team, never lost the game to Iowa State during his time in the Big 12. He knows this team. He knows them well, but this is a new team, a new year. And that Iowa State team, like I said, they're pretty pesky.
Yeah, I said that Houston-Duke is the game that I'm most looking forward to in the Sweet 16, but I think this might low-key be the best game. This is kind of the one I think could end up being the best game of basketball. I mean, I think two really good teams. I think Iowa State had probably the quietest, incredible season I've ever seen. Like, I feel like, this team just so quietly earned a #2 seed. They didn't make a ton of noise. To be honest, the first time I really watched them that significantly was in that Big 12 championship game against Houston. And that made quite an impression on me. I picked them to make a pretty deep run, and they've looked good. I really like this team. It's an interesting matchup, against an Illinois team that, like you kind of mentioned, has struggled to make runs in the tournament in the past. Maybe this team's different. They've got a guy in Shannon, like you said, who, we won't get into the off the court, situation there. You can look that up if you're curious, but he's been red hot. He's scoring like 35 points in almost all these games. So, he's going to be tough to contend with. Iowa State's my pick here. I think they're the better team, but I could totally see a reality where Shannon just gets crazy hot and Illinois is able to win this game.
I am not a conference pride guy. I never have been, never will be. But I'm probably rolling with the Big 12 team here, Iowa State. If you look at, like, again, I'm going to point to the Ken Palm numbers. #1 rated defense in the country, Iowa State. But they're going up against the #1 offense in Illinois. So that there's your matchup. If they can continue to be pesky, if they can really corral TJ Shannon, if they can frustrate him. Because that's the thing. If you can frustrate Shannon, you'll get him out of his game. Like he will make stupid mistakes. He'll get into foul trouble or turn the ball over. And I think that's what they're going to do. And I think that's what they're going to have to do if they're going to beat Illinois this weekend to advance to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair way to look at it. I have them doing that. I have them in the Elite Eight, losing in the Elite Eight. And again, just standing by that, I really like this team. I think a team that's fallen under the radar throughout a lot of this year, but shouldn't be. A team that won the most competitive basketball conference in the country, the tournament at least. So, I'm rolling with him here, but like I said, I really could see a reality where TJ Shannon just gets crazy hot and is able to, score enough that Iowa State can't keep up, even with that really good defense they've got.
Absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the College 12-Pack. Tune in next week. We'll recap the weekend that was, get you prepared for the Final Four. But for Tyler and Patrick, we'll see you next week.